timeline of her disappearance doesn't make sense. More on that search is next. Now here's Harris Faulkner with a preview of what's coming up on the Faulkner Focus. Hi, Harris.
Hi, Dana and Bill. Just listening to your last guest, you know the dire need to find places, particularly for these unaccompanied minors. Migrants might be then heading to our military bases in Texas, as those border facilities are overflowing now. How could that affect our military readiness and national security? Retired four-star General Jack Keane will be with me. Plus, what happened to following the science? One of America's largest teachers' unions is pushing back on the new CDC guidelines that many had hoped would finally get kids back in school. They say 3 feet. What? Faulkner Focus, top of the hour.
Here's exciting news for...
I do know that the VIPD has sent investigators up from St. Croix as of last Friday, and they are now incorporating their own drone technology as well for further mapping and further searching.
All right, Jeff,
so the efforts are continuing.
Up here on the screen, we have the tip line 340-774-2211. If anyone has any information, of course, they should call that immediately. Jeff, I'm assuming that Mr. Bain has still not allowed anyone with authorities to search his boat?
Not to my knowledge, he has not. I spoke to the VIPD this morning, notified them that he was on board, as they had previously requested me to contact him if I happened to see him. I did do that. I got confirmation via email that they received my information.
I'm not asking you to speculate, but I do want to know if any tips have come in from around the island. As you said, it's a small community. Is there any idea about what could have happened here?
It is a very small community, and like anywhere else, you know, in a small community, it's you can relate it to high school or the old game, you know, in kindergarten where 10 kids got in the line and one whispered something in one ear, and by the got the other end, it was totally something different. So there's speculation, there's rumors, but I think it's very, very important we focus on the facts. We stick to what we know to be true. We keep trying to figure out how to fill in this timeline with all the empty spaces. Keep dotting those I's and crossing those T's, because it's a puzzle. The more we dig, we'll find more pieces and eventually put together, but we got to keep digging.
Jeff, her family says that they don't believe that the timeline adds up. They say there's something wrong here. Do you agree with them?
You know, I guess it depends on how you say it adds up. In my opinion, the timeline is it's hard for me to understand. I can't necessarily make from point A to point B with it, and there's a lot of holes to be filled in. I think that's what we really have to focus on, is filling those holes in. You know, let's access those nav systems, those anchor systems. Let's see which satellites they pinged off of, and find that blueprint, you know, digitally of actual facts of when things happened, they took place, and continue to fill in the blanks.
Well, it's another beautiful day there in St. John. I know that you expect that down there, and you'll be out there again searching. Keep in touch with us, Jeff. That's Jeff Jones. Thank you so much.
Thank you guys for having us, and I appreciate you keeping this in the forefront until we find resolution to find SARM.
Thank you, Jeff.
Yeah, but the family and friends looking for answers on this, too.
Yeah.
He's been terrific for us.
He's really good.
Yeah. What's on your mind? Anything?
Well, the Suez Canal thing, that was a big deal to me. There's a guy that, so when it first happened, there's a ship behind, and somebody is on the ship, and they take a picture, and they put on Twitter, very calmly, said, looks like we could be here a while.
You think about if the Panama Canal were shut down like this, I mean, think about how that stops shipping and cargo and, commercial traffic.
Cargo is already delayed across the world because of COVID. And you know, this was just
if you don't go through the Suez, you got to go all the way through, it's South Africa, right? Yeah. You know what's on my mind?
What?
You know I love bananas, right? I don't think after COVID I'm going to eat another banana.
How many bananas have you had in the last year?
At least 700. I mean, 365 days.
But
here's what's going on. Our company, provides snacks for us. I mean, very generous, very gracious. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yes.
But after a year, I mean,
I've been eating the oranges and the mandarins. I really like those. I want to know who in the building is eating the mangoes. Because they're really hard to eat. I mean, you have to know how to peel it correctly. Cut it. I mean, it's just so messy.
You're not wrong.
They have mangoes.
Yeah. That might be my last banana.
No, come on. But a banana is the world's most perfect food. What do gorillas eat? They're strong. Bananas.
Okay.
Right?
I'm buying that.
More of this amazing analysis tomorrow. Faulkner Focus up next.
The American people are about to get, finally, their first look at the crisis unfolding at our southern border later today, just one day before President Biden formally takes questions from reporters for the very first time solo in his presidency. I'm Harris Faulkner. You are in the Faulkner Focus. And in focus at this hour, some new developments. The president set to meet with immigration advisors at the White House today to discuss the chaos at our southern border. All that's been seen so far is this edited government video of migrants being processed and photos released by a Texas congressman to add to that. But as I mentioned, later today, the first network pool camera, so just one camera, will finally be allowed into a Texas facility as White House officials and members of Congress are traveling there. Senator John Kennedy says the White House only has itself to blame for the widespread criticism it's facing.
Now, the people making these decisions in the White House, either one or two things are true. Either they're like a rock, only dumber, and never saw this coming, and I don't believe that, or they knew it was going to happen and they're okay with it. What they're upset about, what they're really upset about is they thought they would get a free pass from many members of the Democratic media, and they haven't.
They haven't.
They've been caught.
In addition, Fox News has also learned more than 1,800 migrants with criminal charges or convictions have been freed by judges. Kristen Fisher is live for us at the White House. Kristen, that's got to be the headline of the day.
Probably does, Harris. And you know, today we now know that these top administration officials are now going to be visiting one of those key influx facilities down at the border in Texas. And for the very first time, the White House has agreed to allow a single press camera inside. Now, this camera is going to be serving as the pool. That footage is then going to be shared with all of the other networks. So this is really going to be our first glimpse inside one of these facilities, aside from the few images and videos that have been shared by members of Congress or the administration. And so this is a very small step towards potentially ending the media blackout that the Biden administration has imposed down at the border. And it's likely no coincidence that it comes just one day before President Biden's first formal news conference. Now, this morning, the vice president said that she will absolutely be going down to the border, but she would not say when, nor would she call the situation down there a crisis. But the vice president did say this.
It's a huge problem. I'm not going to pretend it's not. It's a huge problem. And are we looking at overcrowding at the border, in particular of these kids? Yes. We've been in office less than 100 days. We're addressing it. We're dealing with it, but it's going to take some time. And are we frustrated? Are you frustrated? Yes, we are.
The vice president in that interview went on to blame the Trump administration for what's happening down at the border, but Republicans say it is the result of the new administration's policies. And look at this. The president of Mexico seems to agree. President Lopez Obrador put out a statement just yesterday saying, quote, expectations were created that the government of President Biden, there would be a better treatment of migrants. And this has caused Central American migrants and also from our country wanting to cross the border, thinking that it is easier to do so. Now, one other thing to watch for today, there is going to be a big meeting about the border here at the White House. Cameras are going to be allowed briefly inside for that, so there's always an opportunity that reporters are going to be able to shout questions to President Biden and that he may answer. So, you know, Harris, really watch for that. It's supposed to happen at 2 p.m. today. Harris?
Yeah, you wonder how much they capitulated to all the pressure. I mean, just about every network you turned on yesterday was talking about how none of us as journalists could get anywhere clear, but yet in the Trump era and the Obama era, they could go down there and shoot and capture the stories of what was going on. All right, Kristen Fisher, thank you very much.
Thanks,
Meanwhile,
Harris.
the Pentagon says it's looking into requesting to house migrant children at Texas military bases. However, it maintains it won't affect training or operations.
I can tell you that the department has received a request for assistance from the Department of Health and Human Services to temporarily house unaccompanied migrant children. We'll analyze it and evaluate it just like we would any other request for assistance.
I want to bring in now retired four-star General Jack Keane, my first guest for the hour. Good to see you, General. So when you hear something like this, you really do know that there's a dire need. I mean, we know that some of the facilities are north of 700% overflowing. overcapacity. They'd looked at buildings at NASA and now military bases. What do you think about it?
Well, I think it's appropriate to look there. Obviously, we have something of an emergency situation on our hands. And we've been here before. And the military bases are used routinely to help local citizens and local communities when they have natural disasters in those areas. But also for refugees, the Vietnamese, 110,000 in the 70s, Cubans and Haitians by the thousands in the 80s, Kosovo refugees, 20,000 in the late 90s. And then during the Obama administration, we used 5 military bases to accommodate about 16,000, many of whom were also migrant children. So we're back here again with this problem. The military can do this, and they can do it, Harris, without sacrificing their national security mission or whatever the major function is on that base. The HHS, or the Health and Human Services, actually run these facilities. The military certainly would assist them. And the military, not all bases, but a number of bases do have the space in terms of the ground available, and in some cases they have unoccupied facilities that can be used as well.
Yeah, you know, I'm thinking about how the children in particular are literally, let's just call it suffering. They're suffering along their journey, waiting to get into the country, and then when they get here, we're not even testing all of them for COVID-19, the ones that we find positive that we're able to. I would imagine you've got to do some treatment. We're not hearing a lot about that. Maybe with the one press person, pool person they'll let through today, we'll learn more about that. But at least on military bases, I know, having grown up on an Army post all over the world on different ones, you will have facilities there that you wouldn't have in, like, the Dallas Convention Center, which is one of the places they put teenagers.
No, they don't have anything quite on that scale, but they do have major fitness areas that they use, gymnasiums, etc. And we have plenty of space. And in that space, certainly, tents can be put up. And the other thing is, when you go to a federal installation, you don't have to get state licensing to approve what you're going to do there. In some cases, that can take weeks. So a federal installation also has less bureaucracy associated with it because the federal government is going to a federal installation to use it. And that's certainly within their prerogatives to do, and there's no licensing requirements.
Well, it's interesting because this administration is really in a battle on its hands for transparency with the media. You put something on a federal facility like a military base. I know growing up on them, you didn't see a lot of TV cameras. So that insulates their what they're doing even more. That is one side of the story. I want to move to this. Turning to other foreign policy challenges now for the Biden administration, General. The next commander of U.S. forces in the Pacific is warning lawmakers about the growing threat from China. Let's watch.
We see China increasing at a rate that is faster than anyone previously believed their nuclear stockpile. We've seen the largest military buildup by China. That does bring with it certain vulnerabilities.
What's happening with China?
Well, first of all, China has a very comprehensive policy to seek domination of the region and also the world, economically, technologically, and militarily. But the military issue here is very significant, Harris, because this commander who's coming in and the outgoing commander are essentially saying the same thing. And to break it down simply, in the Indo-Pacific region, the United States military is outgunned. We have gone through significant erosion of our capability because of the priority of the 9/11 wars and the reduced defense budgets largely during the Obama administration. As such, we are outgunned in that region. The Chinese have more ships, more airplanes, and an incredible amount of offensive conventional missiles, the largest arsenal on the planet. And what they can do to our forces in the region is very significant.
Forgive me, but I want to tick along here, and I want to get this from you because I know you know this. How in the world did we get to the point where they have so much more than we do?
I just said it. I mean, it was the priority of the 9/11 wars and the reduction of the defense budgets. You put that together for 20-plus years, and we are where we are. The Trump defense budget is trying to get us out of that. But now, I mean, we need, because the Chinese are so aggressive, they've got the wind at their back economically, they've got the most rapid growing military, and they're ambitious and aggressive. You can see what they've done in crushing Hong Kong's democracy, what they're doing with the Uyghurs, the intimidation and coercion of Taiwan on a daily basis. We have to put in place an absolute deterrence that they see as credible. One, they see the capabilities there, and we have to fix that as urgently as possible, and the Admiral was asking for that. Number two, we have to convince them that we have the resolve to use it, and that is what makes a credible deterrence. I believe in the Obama administration, they believed that we would not use it, and already the military capability was eroding. So those two things have to be done. I believe the administration is doing the right thing. They're taking a tough stand here, and we're going to see if they resource the Defense Department and also what this Admiral is specifically requesting, because he is saying the problem is urgent, and I agree with him. We're not hyping the enemy here, as sometimes people in the Defense Department get accused of doing. This is a serious threat, and we have to pay attention to it.
Let's get to North Korea. Firing several short-range missiles over the weekend, and the White House shrugging it off, saying that the launches were not covered by sanctions. But North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un's sister recently warned, quote, if the Biden administration wants to sleep in peace for the coming 4 years, it had better refrain from causing a stink at its first step, end quote. What does that mean, and what does that mean coming from her?
Yeah, well, she's obviously the closest confidant to Kim Jong-un, and obviously she is speaking for him. What has happened is we've been stalemated ever since the Hanoi summit back in 2019, when we asked the North Koreans to put a plan on the table to denuclearize. All they wanted was sanction relief. We saw through it, and the Trump team walked out. There hasn't been any substantive negotiations since then. What is happening? I believe Kim Jong-un is starting to flag this administration. He'll start with these short-range missiles. We'll hear his belligerent rhetoric again, not just his sister. He'll probably go to medium-range missiles to try to get the administration's attention, then go back into negotiations to do what? To get sanction relief. This has always worked in the past. It's no doubt he's going to try this again out of his playbook, even though it did not work with the Trump administration. I believe they're creatures of habit here, and they have succeeded at it in doing it. Also, here's another important point. He's not in desperate straits as much as he had been in the past, and the reason is Russia and China are covertly providing economic assistance to North Korea, despite the fact they voted for the resolutions that prohibit that. And they're lying through their teeth when they're saying they're not doing it. We have the evidence that they are doing it.
Wow, so they're in concert. And thank you earlier for answering my question. I just could not believe that in a 20-year gap, the 9/11, so on and so forth, we could not make up the difference, and China has gained so much ground on us militarily. That is really ground shaking. Both these things are, and they kind of go together the way that you just said it. General, thank you very much. Good to see you today.
Yeah, well, thank you. Good talking to Harrison. Thank you for your father's service.
Thank you. I appreciate that, sir. Well, as we learn more about the Colorado shooting suspect, Congresswoman Ilhan Omar says people love to focus on race in these situations, but only when the suspect is anything but white. The pushback she's getting on social media. And in the wake of this mass shooting, lawmakers are again pushing for gun control immediately. President Biden says he may take matters into his own hands, executive order-wise. Will this tragedy turn into another partisan debate?
My ears are all open. I'm not worried about gun grabs. I'm not worried about losing my Second Amendment. I'm worried about Congress focusing its efforts on appeasement and good talking points rather than legislation that may save lives.
They will be held fully accountable under the law. And of course, we'll look forward to what lessons we can learn.
That is Colorado Governor Jared Polis, as Boulder, Colorado is mourning, as you know, 10 people killed in Monday's tragic shooting. The youngest victim was 20 years old. And we are learning more about the suspect. Authorities have charged 21-year-old with 10 counts of first-degree murder. And if convicted, he could face life in prison without parole. Jeff Paul on the story for us in Boulder. Jeff.
Yeah, Harris, for this community here in Boulder, it really does feel like the focus